sometimes you hit a brick wall because they just won't communicate. They won't talk. They won't listen. And with Buda, we're in this perfect wheel. All the components are there.
Welcome to Alt Investing Made Easy, where we explore the complex world of alternative assets. I'm Roland, a securities attorney, investment advisor, and your co-host.
And I'm Sarah, an investment advisor and corporate attorney, and your other co-host. We'll guide you through real estate, private equity, and more, making complex topics accessible.
Tune in for insights that empower your financial journey.
Let's make alt investing easy, one episode at a time.
Welcome everyone to Alt Investing Made Easy. Today we are having a conversation with our friends Tim Dowling and Frank Navarro. They have an opportunity to invest in Buda, Texas, in a project called Roundabout in Buda, which is a mixed retail project, neighborhood retail project. So today we'll hear a bit from Tim and Frank and about them and about their project. Roland?
Yeah, hey, Tim, Frank, welcome to Alt Investing Made Easy.
Well, thank you guys so much. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
And we got to let everyone know Sarah is in Dubai. That is the reason for the periodic lags. It's not her technology because they probably have the best out there.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes,
Sarah is in Dubai.
Today,
and that's the magic of the internet. You know, the magic of the internet. We can be all in 4 different places, even on the other side of the world. But, you know, this is fun for me because, Tim, you and I have known each other for a long time. And Frank, I think we've met before, but, you know, I recognize you from prior deals, but or you know, meetups or whatever. But Tim, I've known you for a real long time through the Tuesday afternoon or Tuesday lunchtime commercial real estate meetup that Ken
I always
Harris,
think it's
our
10
friend,
years that Ken started that, but I think it's 8. I don't know.
Well, it's you know, it was before COVID for sure.
Yes.
And it's, you know, migrated around a couple different places, and it's just a really good group. And you know, giving people an opportunity to get to know people on a personal basis. And I feel like that's how I've gotten to know you, you know, and we can have you guys on as a guest and speak to the fundamental integrity of who you guys are. And, you know, that's just so important for anybody making an investment decision, you know, knowing that the person that they're investing with is somebody they can trust. So, it's fun for us to, you know, we love all our guests, of course, but, you know, we've known each other for a long time. So that makes it more meaningful, Tim. Well, let's get started. And, you know, we love to hear about people's backgrounds. We think that this podcast media, you know, is all about authenticity. Maybe at some point they'll be able to produce this just with our avatars and AI, but right now I don't know that the technology is there yet. So we really want to hear about a little bit. We don't have an unlimited amount of time on the podcast, but we do want to hear about Tim and Frank and a little bit about your background and how you got to where we're at today.
Awesome. I'll start it off and kick it over to Frank. So I've been in real estate for over 20 years in the area. And as we're already talking about the meetup that was focused, it started off on apartments and it really transitioned more into straight up commercial real estate in different avenues. But I started off with residential. I've always been in the Austin area in my real estate career. And over time, I transitioned. I had a large contract with the government, HUD homes. And then I started buying a lot of single family homes. I did the traditional path where you think I've got to start small and then I step up. You know, going back in hindsight, I would have started big. But at the same time, every little piece that I have is a building block on the next, because I went from single family, then I rolled to duplexes and 1031s. And then I rolled to my first apartment complex that I own with 2 other people inside of a tenants in common. Then I own a mobile home park and an RV park, and it just kept on being building blocks coming together. Investor in a ton of passive investments in mostly in apartment complexes. And then I had the opportunity, and I ended up pulling in Frank a few years ago I'm doing a large apartment complex we're finishing up permitting for right behind the Moon Tower in South Austin. And that one's a little tougher. We're in with Travis County. We're at the final rounds of getting our permits together, but it's been 3.5 years. But it was really exciting. At the same time, well, let me jump over and let Frank kind of kick into it, and then we'll talk about how this thing what we're creating happened. So Frank, just get ready to listen. This guy he's mind-boggling in terms of his game that he plays.
Thanks, Tim. Yeah, so I'm Frank Navarro. I'm a partner at M&O Partners, which is a multifamily retail and mixed-use developer. We focus exclusively on the I-35 corridor between Austin and San Antonio. Everything we do is some form of wood frame, even if it may have concrete structured parking. My background prior to starting M&O was really in the same industry, working for a few national developers as a project manager and on the capital structuring team. So I got to do about $1.6 billion of deals collectively. And this is anything from cottage style student housing all the way up to, condo high rise. I was involved early in my career in the Independent Tower in downtown Austin, which is no longer the tallest building in town, but at one point it was. We've been beaten a few times now. I got a really good variety of experience, and eventually me and another one of my colleagues working with me at Aspen Heights Partners had spun off and started M&O in 2017. And we were fortunate enough to be selected as the development partner for two of Tim's projects. So very happy to be here.
Yeah, we met Frank and also David Morin along the way. We were doing our project I mentioned down in South Austin. They were doing another complex that they're going through the permit process, and we had a change in terms of who was involved with our GP structure. And I had been talking with Frank and David for some years, and I actually, when it was time, I said, hey, we want you. You got the experience that we need to kind of get us through to the next step. And it happened to be, he didn't even mention, his family is extremely involved all of his lifetime in retail development. So that's where it kind of comes in with that mixed use piece of the whole concept. Anyway, with their financial prowess, let's call it, and their connections through the industry, it was a natural gravitational pull. And then what happened is, so 3 years ago, going back to COVID that you mentioned, going to those meetups, it started way before then. I started a group here in Buda because I live here. I've been here for a long time, since '04. And I came up with the realization, and just like a lot of people with COVID, that life I need to really look at what I'm doing and what I want to do. And so I stepped back and said, why do I own an apartment complex in Houston? Why do I have a mobile home parking off in El Campo? Why do I have this? Why do I have that? Why am I going to learn stuff that I don't know anything about in terms of territory and all the rest, where, specific area and geographic preference is so powerful? You hear about it all the time in real estate as a realtor, selling homes or selling businesses. But the reality is like, man, I know every square inch of where I live. I know all the pieces of it. So I started a meetup without actually really a plan down in my area 3 years ago. It was 3 years ago last month. My whole goal was to have the city officials come in and say, what do you want? And I was hoping they would tell me what they want. And if it made sense, I was going to try to deliver it. And it worked. It's wow. But my first one, I had the county commissioner. What do you want? And then it happened to be our city manager was at our first meetup. He was in interim spot, but was given the directive by the city. We need you out facing. We need you out in the public. So I was able to ask him, would you come talk next month and tell us what you think we need? And then it turned into the development department. It turned into the EDC. We've had, we've had every group imaginable come to our site. And, when you're thinking about things, in terms of what makes sense, you look for opportunities. Where is there a hole in the marketplace? I don't want to do something everybody else is doing. And the one thing that was overwhelming is we are doing a community type center. We're doing a community gathering spot because the city says, we don't have any place for the families to go. We need retail. We need family place. And so that's what this whole project's about. But I don't want to keep going on and on and on. What areas would you like to discuss? Because this is beyond exciting for us.
Well, yeah, no, I just think it's worthwhile noting that, that's a particular genius that you express. I think everybody's got their own, but, you had this realization during COVID that, why am I outside, this community? I know more about this area than I do other areas. And then I really also like that story about forming the meetup where you had this specific vision of getting the city to tell you, what to do. And that makes it so much easier because we know around here for sure, you went to Hayes County, which is south of Travis, and you told us, you've got a deal in Travis as well, but Travis is notorious in Austin. City of Austin is notorious for taking such a long time to approve things. But it sounds like the Hayes County people and Buda people have been much more cooperative and helpful for you guys.
Well, it's crazy. I actually just put out a little article that our architect did last week. It's on a P3, the old private placement or the private partnership, and with the community. Everything came. It was crazy. This whole thing was manifested just by an idea of let me listen. And I can tell you what, man, in real estate, listening is such a key. And it gives you the insight that because you don't want to just have one little stamp of this is what I do, because that might not be what that area might need. And if you can, and you might not be able to fit for all the different pieces, but for ours, it was a lot different because I'm partnered up with these hospitality guys. They own, I think it's 7 restaurant bars in town, Moon Tower, Nate's, they have Vincent's, Bricks. So in Main Street Pizza and Buda, but anyway, they come from this background. And so when it kept on coming that, hey, we have 30% of our populations under the age of 18, nowhere to go. It just started, it rang true. It's like, oh, this is what we need to do. And so, we ended up picking up we started off with a 3-acre site, and we were like, we could put a restaurant right here and we can add some retail to kind of help out and make it all work and it'll make sense. But we kept on staring over. Sarah and Roland, have you guys ever read any of the Rich Dad, Poor Dad books?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. And there was one in particular that he told a story about. He bought a ranch, and he had this ranch, and he was like, wait, why am I paying for all this? What if I cut this thing in half and sell off this, and now I have this to leave behind? So we were looking at this extra 15 acres next to our 3-acre site. And I was like, how can we make this work? The price is ridiculous. The land is so expensive these days, and sellers think their stuff is just worth a lot, which, in time it will be. In this case, he got what he wanted because I went to the city and said, hey guys, what if I said, we want to develop this large retail center, 64,000 square foot. We want to put restaurants. We want to put places for the community that you want with pickleball, volleyball, areas for the kids to play. We want to bring in businesses that are down home, like either, Buda, Kyle area focused or even just Texas focused. We're not saying no to national brands, but it's got to still be a distinctive one because we're creating a place that people want to go visit. And so anyway, it's just really tumbled away. And the city said, hey, you know what would you need to make this work? And we said, a lot of money. And anyway, that number kept on increasing. And because it was partly in a floodplain, they were pricing it like it wasn't in a floodplain. And by the time it was all said and done, we ended up with a 3-prong incentive program provided by the city so that we could actually financially make this whole project work. And Frank was vital in helping us negotiate it because we have a property tax incentive, we have a sales tax incentive, and then we also, Frank, what do you call this the third part? How would you describe it?
I would call that a municipal fee reimbursement.
Okay, I like that. And it's just kind of like a tally sheet that we get to use as we, like, say we have to remove a tree. Instead of costing the $600 for an inch of a tree or whatever it might be, we're able to just take it off the tally. And same thing with all of our fees to the city are being reimbursed back to us after we submit all of our paperwork. And so it's an incredible partnership, and we're all working together with one focus of creating this site. And it's so neat because, the city manager, the mayor, all the development department, the EDC, everybody's working together to help us get to that end game. So we're having an absolute blast. And for me, I drive by the site probably 4 or 5 times a day because it's on the way to the grocery store.
Well, that's great. And I think one thing that would be good to talk about, and you touched on it a little bit, but the city told you that, we want to have a place for the young people to go. And you use this term, we were talking about how we're going to title this episode, and we're going to talk about investing in Buda, not Buda retail, but Buda neighborhood retail. So maybe it's interesting to me to think about what the distinction is between neighborhood retail and just ordinary retail.
That one's an easy one because what happened is sometimes you find this perfect piece of dirt in terms of where it's located at. And so we're about 1 mile from downtown Buda, but where it sits on the front of these neighborhoods. There's around 7 neighborhoods directly behind it, with another 3 being built right around, plus another one across the street. And it was this long tract of land that only people, they were looking to put gas stations. Actually, someone wanted to put a Goodwill and a funeral home. But we were looking at it, okay, this would be a great spot. So we're actually putting in with our we'll call it selling. I like to call it donating. The city tells me I'm selling it to them, but we're actually putting in a trail system that's going to have a bridge that connects to this other trail, because the city owns this whole path that follows a creek on the backside. It's over a mile-long trail, and with all these homes on both sides, over 5,000 households. With those households, the median income is $111,000. And so it's untapped. Well, so we have this massive parking we're putting in place. We're having, I think it's 376 spaces plus all the walking trails and then bike racks and such like that. But our absolute goal is get those families on those trails, walk on down and come have a fun day. And it ended up being, we've attracted so far what we're looking for in our tenants, and we haven't even moved the dirt. The goal is to move dirt by the end of next month, start the process on phase 1. But it's incredible. We have 3 restaurants, Irish pub that my partners and I are doing. We have this huge moon tower concept with the pickleball, the volleyball, and the kids area. And it sits on almost an acre of land, so a big play area. We have an Italian restaurant. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Amici. They came out of Little Italy in Manhattan, and we're in the top tier. And they came down here actually during COVID to open up a restaurant, and that didn't work because restaurants were closed. So they started off in a food truck. Now they're in a brick and mortar, but they're going to come back to Buda and open up a second site. So, and then in terms of the retail that we're getting, Trinon Coffee out of Westlake. I don't know if Roland, are you familiar with that one?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, we're so excited. They've been in business since 1985, and they're going to have this huge tree they're going to be centered under. And they're even going to sneak in there and have not sneak in there because it's all up above, but we're wine and beer selections, and so they'll have and a deli, so they're going to have it all to have people enjoying themselves all day. But yeah, we're having a blast, an absolute blast. But it is a community center. It's the type of place that families could go to, spend 3-4 hours or even more, and not get bored. I mean, we have a home goods store that is focused on it's kind of like ancient relic type stuff, but it's cool looking, but it's more for your mid-range family in terms of cost and such. We're making, and we also have like a big recreational group coming in. I can't now announce them yet because we're right now in lease negotiation. But it's focused really on that community. I mean, what was the city manager said, "Hey, Tim, you're going to have like a playground." I said, "We're going to have a playground. Plus we're going to do this huge netting piece where kids can jump around and play and climb." And he goes, now you're going to put a fence, right? And I go, do I need a fence? And he goes, Tim, we don't want to lose our kids. And I was like, okay, we're putting a fence. So, we're excited. It is so cool, but it is so focused on the community and doing the right thing.
One thing that we like to present here at Alt Investing Made Easy is, our these investment opportunities. And this is a live deal, and you all are continuing to raise money. You've raised a certain amount so far to cover the current costs, what you've paid for through, this stage of development. You're continuing to raise money. So maybe talk with us a little bit about the fundraise, what your total is, and then what you've raised so far and how you're staging it in. I think that would be an interesting discussion.
Frank, I'm going to let you take it.
Yeah, so this project in total costs about $29 million to build. And so far we've raised $2.2 million in equity, which was what was needed to complete the design and the permitting process and make the site truly shovel ready,
and own the dirt,
and take down the land as well. And we've also secured debt with a local bank for let's see, I've got my numbers over here, for about $19.3 million. So the remainder is just over $7 million that we're looking to raise to complete both phases of the project, which is just over 60,000 square feet of retail.
Okay, so just to summarize, you've raised 2.2 so far to get the dirt, the design, and I guess you said permitting?
Yes,
that's right.
For phase one, we're still working on phase two because we're at those things I mentioned: the pickleball, the volleyball, the trails. All of it is not in the zoning currently. So the city wants these items. So we're actually next week we're going in front of PNZ. But it's 100% backed by the city. So we're just going through the process at this stage for phase two. Phase one, we don't have any of the cool stuff. So we didn't need it.
And then you said $7 million to complete, but you've got the $19 million in debt financing. So this is a pretty big project.
For retail, yeah, it is. We're building in two phases, which I think helps make it, feel a little bit smaller, provide some proof of concept really before you complete the full project. But yeah, I think it's big enough to be able to get in, I would say if we assume 2,000 square feet per tenant, about 30 tenants, which we really like that just because it really diversifies your risk. Triple net retail functions a lot like a bond does. The income is very predictable since you have long-term leases. So the valuation becomes really, what is the income? How much is it going to grow? And what is the risk of not getting that income? And otherwise, what is the credit level of the tenants? So since it's not a grocery store anchored retail with some, huge tenant that has, very high rated credit, the way that we deal with this and boost the valuation is we diversify our risk amongst a few dozen tenants. So when we look at multifamily, for example, it has the lowest cap rate really of any asset class, the lowest implied risk. And the reason for that is not because the tenants have high credit. They often don't, right? There's just so many of them. For example, our Moonlight Tower project has 431 units, which is over 600 tenants. If somebody stops paying rent, we don't like to see that, but it's really not going to affect us, noticeably. So that's one of the things we like about neighborhood retail and why we do prefer the larger retail products. It's really a risk mitigant tool.
Well, it sounds real positive, and I like the fact too, Tim, that you're really you not only have skin in the game with the development itself, but you're partnering up with some of the hospitality people, and you're going to be involved in making sure that these tenants do a good job of paying their rent.
No, it's so different because I'm wearing a developer hat, and a traditional developer, what a lot of times they do is they'll build a box and they'll fill it and they'll run, and they'll be done. And so what we're doing is we're creating a product that makes sense for the long term. We're really focused on creating a legacy for the area that'll last for generations. And with me on site too, as having the restaurants to run, it's like, okay, we got to get all this right. But at the same time, it's balancing out all the numbers, making sure all the numbers make sense to make, everybody's going to get what their goals are to do. Kind of a neat thing too we're doing with the site is, it's really going to depend on who the investor might be. I mean, if a family office jumped in would be my ideal world. But we have to keep all options open. And the reason I say that is if we had a family office because most of the time they're looking for longer term investments. They don't want to just be in 3 to 5, which, I started, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago with the syndication model. But with a family office, you have the opportunity when you get to that point in 3 years, once you have the buildings complete, you have all the tenants now operating, that you go through the refi process. The cap rate most likely will compress. We can't guarantee just because of, the market's going to be in a better place. But the cool thing is everyone's going to have that opportunity, either cash out, or if we're in a position to do it, we could just refi into permanent loan. Everybody cashes out some portion of it, and then to continue on and have those nice, because, as a triple net lease, it's so cool. You got, the tenant is the one that's taking care of the taxes and the repairs. And so it kind of like falls into this little perfect realm of, you still get all the depreciation as the investor in the product. And then on top of that, the cash flow that, in the leases, it's built up to continually increase with inflation. So, it's the idea of you got the goose and the eggs, and I'd rather keep the goose if it's possible. But at the same time, our banker tells us we're ridiculously wrong. What's going to happen is we're going to get an offer that we can't refuse, and we're going to have to walk away in 3. But at the same point, at least we've built an incredible product, and I have two businesses running. So.
Yeah, it sounds like the possibilities are really great here, however things play out. And it's just such a popular area. This, Frank, you said it, where your focus is or was, is just the I-35 corridor. I think you said between Austin and San Antonio, maybe.
That's right.
And, huge high growth area. Everybody, every year Austin's always like one of the highest growth places. And Buda, just for the audience members who maybe aren't familiar with geography, here in Central Texas, but Austin is north of San Antonio, but between Austin and San Antonio are all these small communities, and Buda is basically the next adjacent town next to Austin going south.
We're the borderland.
Yeah. But really, it's funny driving to San Antonio now, south of Austin. It's just like one continuous development. It used to be that there was vast areas of pasture land, and it's just all being built up so much now. So I think you guys are going to be well positioned to achieve your objectives, and you've got some great tenants lined up, and I think something that would be really popular with the neighborhood idea. And I just think about living in one of those neighborhoods and being able to walk and walk down to the coffee shop or whatever, walk to dinner instead of having to drive.
The most people are the most excited about is our Irish pub. I don't know if you're familiar with Kelly's Irish Pub in South Austin. My partners own that one. And so we're bringing, we have it's just going to be a different name, M. McCall's Irish Pub, but everyone's super excited to have that Guinness on tap, and all that delicious fried food.
Yeah, that's a thing for sure.
But one thing too, we didn't even mention, because, I'm not sure. Have you guys been hitting a lot? Have you had retail aspects coming at you guys in terms of investment opportunities?
Yeah, the most recent one, we have another client that does retail. They buy existing centers, and they're in Arizona. So
nice.
it's different,
Yeah.
and they're usually anchored with a big tenant like a grocery store.
Nice. Well, so one of the things we ran into that we weren't aware is, retail right now in the Austin area and surrounding is the golden goose of 2025 for both investors and institutional. And it's because, number one, vacancy rates, and there's all the growth that's going on here. There's just not enough. And It's crazy. So Austin, I think, and Frank, correct me if I'm wrong, Austin's under 5% vacancy rate across the board.
Oh,
We jumped down to the Hayes, or, the Buda area, we dropped down to 2. Within 2 miles of our site, the vacancy rate is 0.02%. And it's this huge hole in the market. And I mean, even if you look at Austin as a whole with a 5% vacancy rate, it's like, wow. And it means for investors, the prices per square foot, it is a nice deliverable. I mean, we're running close to about 40, a little bit more than that per square foot, plus our CAM charges. But it's hard for the tenants, but that's the price you have to do because the cost of building is so high. There's so many little extras we're doing. We're adding to the road in front of us. We're adding a traffic light for people that are crossing the other neighborhood so they'll be able to get to our site. But all these extra features that we're providing require the higher rents, but at the same time, for the investors, the reward is very attractive.
Well, this is really great, and your enthusiasm is obvious, and that's so important to make any endeavor successful. Is you've got to believe in it and put yourself into it, and so it's great hearing about it. We try to be respectful of everybody's time. We're on the 30-minute mark now, and we generally like to do two things. We want to make sure that we've covered everything that you guys wanted to talk about. And then also, getting back, you spoke to this already a little bit. Maybe Frank could chime in on this, but really understanding what drives you guys, what's the why behind what it is that you do? Because, this for sure, this business is about making money, and that's should be the primary consideration. But then, we've heard a lot about your why, Tim, and you're part of this community. You're trying to build up the place where you live and create something really cool that's going to really serve the community there. So anyway, just anything that we haven't heard about the project yet, and maybe more about your personal motivations, what really drives you, not only with respect to this, but just generally.
Well, and I've got to jump over to Frank for 1 second. And then he's going to take over. Frank he does not live in Buda, but he might as well, because he is also right on the border of Austin. Okay, Frank, so he's right here anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think to Roland's point, I mean, everybody's motivated by money, right? And that's important because we can't afford to do these projects if we're not able to show a track record of producing outsized returns to investors in the past. But I think, if we're going to do projects anyways, and we're going to be looking to create places that people truly love to live and shop and hang out and bring their families to. And, I think, that's really important considering that, we live close by, but even projects we do in other areas, I think at, M&O Partners, that's really our whole investment thesis, is that when we have that approach, we truly do profit more, and our investors profit more as well. On the multifamily side, for example, we won't build any project that is not walkable to experiential retail. On the retail side, we won't build any project that's not going to create a place that the residents, actually want to go to and want to be there. And I think for that reason, we have a lot less problems when we go through zoning and entitlements. And, there's obviously times here and there where our projects get opposed and we have to go meet with the neighborhood and explain why we think it's beneficial for them. But generally, if an area doesn't want something, then, we don't want to build it. We're not trying to, force it down anyone's throat or anything. So I think that's served us well so far. And that's something that we're going to continue to strive to do. And I think that's really what's driven, at least my company, M&O Partners, towards the mixed use segment of the market. Zoning code 10, 20 years ago was so segregated as far as, okay, here's your residential, now over here's your retail and here's your office. And now today we realize, people, they don't want to rely on their vehicles so much anymore. They'd love to, walk out the door and, get a coffee or, go to a co-working space or walk on a green belt trail, maybe go to dinner, grab a drink. And yeah, I think that's what we think, to Tim's point towards the beginning of this podcast, that's what really makes this special, is that neighborhood retail component. And that's, I think, played a huge role in Tim's selection of the tenants. He's not I can, as the finance guy, sometimes, I've been like, oh man, I don't know, Tim, but I got to say,
we sometimes do this.
Yeah, he's looking for the tenants that people want, the tenants that people that will last, where there's actually demand, and I'm glad he did that, because now just that they all kind of build on each other. You've got a coffee shop next to a restaurant, next to a place that serves dessert, and yeah, we love to see that, and I think we did very well on that in this project, specifically based on the leases that we have so far. And Tim mentioned a few of them. Most we can't disclose yet, but we're very excited to announce those as they become real leases.
Now, Roland and Sarah, are you guys familiar with Buda? Have you been downtown and checked out some of the restaurants?
I haven't been there in a while.
Yeah, you need to. Take a trip.
I've only seen the sign on the highway.
Well, you're in Dubai. That's a little challenging right now. But when you're back,
I'll come down.
No, yeah. Well, so Buda, and I'll share about that. The one thing that makes also this project so different, even though it is already so different, I think the future of retail, the hardest part is going to be finding land that you can match like with what we're doing, where it has that connectivity. But if you can find it, the other aspect is, what is the area that you're developing in? How receptive are they to such a product? Because not, like we run into in other areas, it's sometimes you hit a brick wall because they just won't communicate. They won't talk. They won't listen. And with Buda, we're in this perfect wheel. All the components are there. We've got, because all the city leaders are focused on the right type of development, it's a very landlocked area. So they're having to be very specific of what they want to be behind and what they want to support. But tomorrow, as an example, there's a full day entrepreneurs event put on by our EDC, the Economic Development Corporation. And I went to it last year, and this is actually where we met our banking partner, but it's a full day from 8 to 5. They have all these different people. There'll probably be 150 people in attendance, but it's all focused on small businesses and also understanding technology, relationships, putting all your business pieces together. They created this organization called The Hive, which is focused on helping small businesses get all their pieces put together to be able to take off and start. It's all this stuff that if it was around during our time, holy cow, sky's the limit. But yeah, Buda is 100% right now. They're really invested in the community, and all the right people are in place. It's like we're hitting at like the perfect time.
Well, like everything, timing is so important, and it's really encouraging to hear about this project. I think this, Sarah, probably is a good place to kind of wind up, but for sure, guys, tell us. I'm going to remind everybody of the name of the project. It's Roundabout in Buda. And maybe before we sign off, tell us about where we can get in touch with you, and we'll make sure that we include all this contact information, all your contact information in the show notes.
Awesome. Yeah, the easiest spot is, honestly, we have a website. It's called roundaboutinbuda.com. Everything, if on it, each page of it, there will be a spot where they can either call or send an email, and it all forwards over to me, and we can get it to the right person. But same thing with LinkedIn, as I don't know, LinkedIn's become a pretty powerful format. So if you find us there, that's probably our number 2 biggest spot. Yeah. No, we didn't even get to go into details about you guys, because I was sharing with them before the show. I was reading their history and what they're doing, and it's actually mesmerizing. That's a whole nother show, though.
You can come on as a guest interviewer.
Well, if you want, that's anytime. You let me know. And if you need somebody to help you in Dubai, I see your family's all out there too right now, currently. Correct?
Yeah. My kids are here. We're all out here. We go back and forth between Austin and Dubai. It's kind of a journey.
Well, I was going to say, Roland's 4 kids. We got all this stuff. So yeah, I'll have to be on to interview you two.
Yeah, that'd be great.
But yeah, and just to mention Sarah too, Hari, Hari is a attorney. Your husband is an attorney in Dubai.
Mm-hmm.
He focuses on maritime shipping law, which I find fascinating. He just posted on LinkedIn the other day that he bought this big boat model that was really cool. And
that was an accident, by the way. He bid on it in an auction at a charity event to kind of get the bidding going, and then nobody else stepped in. So he's got like a meter long like ship model. He always wanted to be a ship owner. He's always wanted to own ships. It's a step down from the sort of like commercial vessel he's anticipating owning, I guess, at some point in his life. So hopefully he'll get there. But yeah, my husband is an attorney, and he practices out here. And actually, maritime law is interesting because it's all international. Everything about it is international. There's so many interesting things in maritime law that we could have a whole conversation about. Even I know stuff. So, and I'm going to definitely come down to Buda. It sounds like you might not have a coffee shop down there. Is it a post-morning coffee or a pre-morning coffee journey?
Well, there's 4 coffee shops. There's some amazing restaurants already in place. It's just not set up for kids to go run like crazy. And that's what we're going to provide, is those places where everyone gets to just let the kids go haywire. So, yeah. But and once again, I'll just throw it out there. We are in the midst of that raise. And if anybody knows any family offices or people that want to play, it's accredited investors only. It's the 506C. And but yeah, we've got all the decks ready to go, so please reach out. We'd love to talk to you.
That'd be great.
That's great. Well, thanks guys for being guests
so
on
much.
Alt Investing Made Easy today.
We'll see you next time.